our childhood was one of quite a lot of poverty. Shortly before my 8th birthday,
Hello, everyone. My name is Manraj, and I am with Money Mentors.
Hi there, my name's Crystal. I'm a financial counselor here at Money Mentors.
Hi, everyone. My name is Sheena Drummond, financial educator with Money Mentors.
Hello, and I'm Mary Grace, digital learning specialist.
Hi there, I'm Sandra Fry, a financial counselor with Money Mentors.
And I would like to welcome everyone to the Humans of Money Mentors podcast, where we talk about all things personal finance, the good, the bad, the pretty, and the ugly. Today, everyone will be sharing their personal money stories, specifically why each of us spend and save the way we do, and how this impacts us in the long term. And I believe, Crystal, that you had a very personal story that you wanted to share.
Yeah, so for me, I feel like we don't often spend because we need something. We spend because we feel something. So in reality, our finances can say a lot about who we currently are, past just the numbers. There's usually a story about our habits or the current situation. So my story centers around a past shopping addiction. I spent every penny and saved nothing. So over several years, I started to question my behavior and I noticed I was emotionally spending. So purchasing anything from trips to clothes, fine dining, jewelry, whatever gave me a brief feeling of excitement and just temporarily masking my deeper feelings. So eventually, this stopped working. When I felt the urge to spend, I started to put a spotlight on my feelings and asked, am I stressed, avoiding a difficult conversation, or is it as simple as I'm bored? So I would pinpoint that feeling and I'd hold it. So after holding this feeling for a minimum of 24 hours, yes, that seems like a long time and it's very uncomfortable in the beginning, but it gets easier. I would then ask how this item would bring value to my life and if I would be sacrificing something else to obtain it. So spending has become very intentional for me and is now a form of self-love. It's important to meet and accept yourself where you currently are and build from there. So change is absolutely possible, and it does take time, but you can do it.
Wow, thank you for being so open and vulnerable. And I love that it's a story about, you're able to address where you had financial challenges and be able to overcome that and grow from that. So that's amazing. Now, for myself, being a child to newcomers to Canada, my story is a bit different. I grew up watching my parents navigate a financial system that was new to them alongside other hardships that they faced building a life in a very different country. Now, I didn't realize it at the time, but from watching them, I actually ended up picking up a lot of their habits. My mom used to spend so long in the grocery store comparing the prices of different items. And as a child, I'd be sitting there and I would get so bored and I wouldn't understand why she was doing this. And I also just saw them trying to save wherever they could. But now as an adult, I find I've actually carried on with their habits. I find that I'm not really a big shopper. I try to be very minimalistic. I don't try to really keep up with fashion trends. I try to invest in timeless classic pieces to be able to add to my wardrobe, which, can be used for years. But similar to my mom, I find that I comparison shop quite a bit, but I actually have the privilege of being able to use price matching apps to be able to find the best deal. When I look at how different things are for myself, I feel an immense amount of gratitude for the sacrifices that they made for their kids. They weren't perfect, but they did their best and they built themselves up pretty well. However, what I'm finding is I'm now navigating the feelings of being able to enjoy life, to be able to strike that balance, right? Where I have a little bit more guilt-free spending and I'm able to have certain indulgences without feelings of guilt. For me, I know it's going to be a work in progress, but that's what I'm focusing on. Progress, not perfection.
Wow, Manraj, I like that. So I grew up in the Caribbean. I'm a Jamaican girl, and it was all in an extended family home. So I had my aunts and cousins and everyone, and then I had both parents. and my siblings as well. And while we were poor in cash, we were rich in at least land. So that counts. But I grew up, my mother was a lot more frugal. She would try to nitpick or save or be more careful with the grocery shopping. My father was the opposite. So he would spend, he was living for the now. If my dad bought you a shoe, you had to wear it right now. Even if it doesn't match with anything you're wearing, you needed to wear it right now. And he'd buy the most expensive things because he believed in, he saw it as something valuable, right? But he wasn't great at saving. I think once he put some money in the savings account, he'd worry about it. So he needed to spend it. He wasn't great with saving. But my mother was always saving for rainy day. And that's something that we talk about in the Caribbean a lot. Now, growing up around me was poverty everywhere. So that wasn't something that was weird to me. I grew up seeing it, I experienced it. There are times when there was lack. My father was a tradesman, and so income was fluctuating. There are times when there were dry season and things were really hard. And because he was like the sole breadwinner, whenever he struggled, everybody struggled. It was a ripple effect. What that did to me as a young adult was, of course, there was a side of me that can't wait to go indulge and have my own money and do what I need to do. But then there's a side of me that developed fear, and it was more of a scarcity mindset. Because we grew up with so little resources, it's like once you have money, you're so scared to spend it because you're scared to go back to lack, right? And so I'm constantly in a dilemma with, okay, do I spend? Just release it, girl. If you have to spend it, spend it. But also just like being careful about money. What I've learned recently through discipline is I've been able to strike a balance for myself. So again, I've also had the fear of generating wealth, creating wealth, because somehow poor people just think money is demon, right? They think money is a bad thing. It's just like, oh, let's live for the moment, tomorrow provides for itself kind of mentality. So there was some amount of fear surrounding creating wealth and what does that look like. And again, I've developed that discipline within myself where I've learned how to manage my money, how to budget, which has been a tool that has saved me a lot. And especially now that I'm a single mother, it's kind of very important to my functioning. So I'm happy that I'm now on this new journey where I understand money, I respect money, and I learn how to manage the resources that I have. And guess what? It's a journey, but balance is possible.
For me, money has always been tied to stress. My mother, an immigrant, and my father, a baby boomer, they both had very different experiences with money, but both had constant anxiety around it. They both grew up in poverty and were not the most well versed in finances. And I noticed this financial stress at home, mostly a lot of credit card debt. I remember my mom sitting me down one day and showing me how much money was coming in versus going out and telling me to stop asking her for things because we just couldn't afford it. That memory was kind of burned into my mind, and it created this constant worry and feeling that there was just never enough. Once I had my own income, I noticed I fell into a cycle, spending when I was emotional, and then I'd avoid looking at my accounts, and then eventually looking and feeling guilt and shame. I would then over budget and restrict for a while, and then the pattern would just repeat. While I wasn't in debt, I also wasn't progressing either. I was spending as much as I made, if not sometimes more, and I knew something had to change. When working as a server, I did try paying myself first, setting aside as much as I could. I also became more intentional when going out. I'd ask myself, do I really need that extra add on? Do I really need that additional cocktail? And while I'm improving, I do still slip into emotional spending and being inconsistent. However, I remind myself it's about progression, not perfection. Change takes time, effort, and always getting back up when we fall. But I still compare myself to my peers, those who own their own homes, have their own cars, and I do feel like I'm behind, but I do remind myself that the only person I should be comparing myself to is my previous self.
Okay. So for me, I grew up in Canada, but our childhood was one of quite a lot of poverty. Shortly before my 8th birthday, My mom had a serious car accident that left her permanently disabled and unable to care for us, let alone herself. So my father found himself responsible for and trying to provide for two little girls. He was the spendthrift and loved to buy stuff and often spent more than what we had, which caused us to struggle to make ends meet. Things were so dire at one point in my teenage years that I remember all we had in the house to eat was oatmeal. So to this day, it's not one of my favorite foods. But as an adult, I learned to manage my money very carefully, and even more after finding myself a single mom. And I had $40,000 worth of student loan debt to try and tackle as well. But I worked in the bank, so I couldn't do anything about it other than pay it back. I eventually married a single father who also had a tight budget. But because of our upbringing and our dedication to trying to stay out of debt, we managed to pay off $100,000 worth of debt in our first 5 years of marriage and still put money aside to help our kids hopefully not struggle with their education costs. Now we're decades later with a home, our kids are grown, we've got good incomes, but we still struggle with that scarcity mentality from growing up in those large families with that limited income. And we also find it hard to treat ourselves. We've only ever taken one tropical vacation to celebrate, our 20th wedding anniversary, and instead take frugal camping vacations, which started out in a tent when we first got together. So, but we've started to realize that time is marching on, and we may not always have the health to be able to do some of the things that we want to do. But thanks to that rigorous savings that we've been doing in our times together, we did get to enjoy a year off in Europe where my husband worked last year. So I got to actually have the advantage of not working, partially because I couldn't work, but but still, despite all that, we still are, stuck between the YOLO and trying to avoid the positions that our parents found them in, struggling with debt.
Wow. Thank you, everybody, for being so open and vulnerable. And it's interesting to see what all of our money stories are and how we've ended up in our chosen careers, right, with money mentors. Now, this brings us to the end of the session. If you enjoyed this recording, please follow along as we will have more Humans of Money Mentors discussions in the future. If you are struggling with debt, if you need to speak to somebody, give us a call. Our credit counselors are here to provide free and confidential credit counseling. We're a trusted not-for-profit, and we're here to help you so that you don't have to deal with any financial challenges alone. Have a great day, everyone.